This episode is brought to you by Smartwool. Don't wait for warmer days. Smartwool's Winter Run collection is powered by merino wool to get you out there all season. Adapting to changing conditions is what merino wool does best, so you can go far and feel good. Join the Smartwool mailing list to receive updates and 15% off your first smartwool.com purchase on full price products only. See terms for details. It's September 27, just before 7 a.m. in Canfranc, Spain. Race day morning at the World Long Course Trail Running Championships, and Nelson, BC's Jazmine Lowther finds herself pushed to the very back of the narrow starting corral, just moments before the start of the 82-kilometer race. Stuck behind a wall of other racers, she reached the first timing checkpoint in 49th place, unable to bridge the growing gap to the race leaders thanks to the tight bottleneck of slowing athletes at the race's first serious climb. Yet while many athletes would have accepted the bad luck and resigned themselves to a disappointing finish, Jazmine began a surge through the field that would take her all the way back, breaking into the top 10 before picking off the top trail runners in the world one by one, eventually crossing the finish line in fourth, and the highest ever finish by a Canadian at the World Mountain and Trail Running Championships. The result put an exclamation point on what has been a breakout year for the Canadian, including several top 10 finishes at some of the world's biggest races like UTMB, and a series of fastest known times on some of the most iconic trails in the world. Today on the Shakeout Podcast, we connect with Jazmine to recap her standout performance at the World Champs, the preparation that got her there, and what challenges still loom large on her bucket list in the months ahead. Jazmine, welcome to the Shakeout Podcast.
Thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure. And yeah, thank you so much for that intro.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. We've been looking forward to connecting and talking about the stunning season that you've had so far. So first off, congrats on what's been a really exciting last couple of months. Now, you're right back at it. At the time that we're recording this, you're actually back in Europe yet again. Several trips there this year so far for you. What brings you there this time?
I did do a very, very quick trip back to North America. It was my grandma's celebration of life, which was super important to me. I really usually try to just keep it to one trip to Europe a year. But this was like super meaningful to me. So I am back in Switzerland right now, and yeah, I'm with my Arc'teryx team. We're doing a photo shoot right now, and then in one day I will be heading over to Albania to fast pack 100-mile loop through the mountains in the Balkans with my teammates. And so we're definitely in for an adventure. It's going to be very wild, very remote, no cell phone service, using maps and compass and things like that. So we'll see how that adventure unfolds. But so I'm over here for a little bit, and then I'm also looking forward to going back to North America, and then settling down at some point and having a little break.
Settling down at some point. You were probably a bit overdue for a break after the year you've had, and I'd love to dive into some of those kind of off-trail adventures that have been a big part of your year. But the first place that I want to start is with some of the big competitions that have highlighted your season, and not too long ago. So amazing that you're already eyeing 100-mile fast packing trips. But let's go back a couple of weeks to the World Mountain Running Championships in Canfranc, Spain. You were, of course, fourth in the long trail event. First Canadian finisher, top Canadian ever at that event, highest placing. How much of a surprise was that result to you?
You know, going into it, I definitely had the podium in mind. I didn't quite think or believe, like, you know, I think going up against legends like Katie Scheid, it's like, you know, she's a GOAT right now, and she's so versatile, and it's amazing to watch her just take off, and she still has a long runway in her career. So yeah, it was in my mind that, hey, I'm going to aim for a podium. I also had in my mind top 10 would be amazing. And then I always have plan C of just go out there and enjoy and experience the world champs, and being out there with everyone wearing their country and just seeing the diversity in trail running was really, really cool and very special. So yeah, it was a good time. Sure.
It is really a mountaintop moment, pardon the pun, for trail running right now. I think more countries represented at these world championships than we've ever seen before. That does come with its challenges, though, and you found that out the hard way at the start of this race. Take us through the first half of that 82-kilometer World Trail Long Course Championships, because it wasn't exactly a scripted start the way that you probably would have liked it to go.
Yeah, it definitely had its differences from UTMB, and I think that's where World Champs will be growing, and every year they're taking feedback, and yeah, so there's some growing pains there. There's quite a process for everyone. You get there early, an hour before the race start. It's mandatory you make it there at least 30 minutes before, or you're not going to be allowed to race whatsoever. And you go into what's called a call room. So they set up this very large tent. Everyone is in there with their team. You're prepping. And then you go to these stations where there's actually officials who go through your mandatory gear kit piece by piece, ensuring that everyone has the mandatory gear. Once you pass that test, then you can go through a gate. And then you're in this little pen, and that's where you can warm up, basically, and there's other toilets and things like that. But we're basically doing hamster circles in this very small pen with hundreds of athletes, and you kind of feel like you're a fish in a swimming pool. And yeah, there's lineups still for the toilets, things like that. And I do like to do one last toilet run before the start line, about 10 minutes before, and it was kind of that decision of like, okay, do I do the bathroom or do I get to the start line? I chose the bathroom. I don't know if that was a mistake, but with World Champs, they did not have it organized by ITRA score or UTMB index. So it was just kind of like, yeah, wherever you could get a spot, but it was just so tightly packed. We're shoulder to shoulder. And I also wanted to be there with my team, but I found myself at the very back of a couple hundred people. And yeah, the countdown happens. We start running. It's the massive crowd, classic scene. And we had about a mile down the road, but we actually stayed quite bunched together that entire time. And immediately we met a very small staircase that you go one by one. So as you can imagine, there's a couple hundred people, and I was literally standing still for a minimum of 2 minutes. It might have even been 3 or 4. I don't know. And then people are getting ahead of you in that time. And then we're on single track for another few miles, and it's dark. It did not feel great to try to pass people during that time. And then every once in a while there's rocks or other stairs that people meet. And then again, there was more bottlenecks. So on the one hand, when you're at the back of the pack like that, it does slow things down. It's kind of like letting you warm up slow. Like your heart rate is already going to be naturally high. So on the one hand, I was like, okay, this is the situation I'm in, and this will be my slow warm up, things like that. I'm not going out too hard. I'm not going to like go crazy. But then on the other hand, it's like, oh, wow, I have a lot of work to do to be passing literally hundreds of people, men and women. And once that opportunity was provided, we're going up these switchbacks. There's a little bit more room. It was still hard. You're always, when you're passing people, sometimes people will, move over, or you ask. And then sometimes you are jumping over rocks and things like that. Yeah, and it can be just a bit more mentally fatiguing. And it definitely was not the best case scenario. And it's one of those situations that I have a lot of what ifs. What if I had been in front, and what if I could have seen the top female? My plan was not to go out super hard, but to keep them within reaching distance, and, to have their splits at the very least, or to be able to visibly see them. So that plan was out of the window. And yeah, it's one of those also scenarios of like, believe in yourself, stick to your gut, stick to like, have your confidence anyways. And that's for myself to learn. And should I have pushed to the front or hop the fence and hop the fence back in? But yeah, that's also feedback for World Champs, that hopefully they organize the corral a little bit better. And then I also believe that they should have staggered the starts of men and women. And I think it would be really cool to have a women's race where, and maybe it's not possible yet, but someday down the road, where you're not having to pass because you are passing a lot of men as well when you're in the top 10 field for the female race too.
Yeah, absolutely. You were, I believe, 63rd overall in a field of over 200. That's men and women. Fourth overall, of course, on the women's side. Was there ever a moment where those original goals of top 10 or even an outside shot at a podium didn't seem feasible anymore?
Yeah, so I mean, at the first checkpoint, I was 49th. I didn't know it, but I knew I was far back. And somewhere along the line, I was 29th, and then I saw I was 21st. And then I did see, okay, I'm in the top 20, so that's cool. But I was also, for ultras, one of my mantras is like the race really does not start until halfway through the race. So that's when I really tell myself, okay, halfway through, that's when I'm going to be really pushing hard. Yeah, I definitely believed I would make it to top 10 no matter what, unless something actually like went wrong, if I fell or something like that. So, yeah, and my mantra as well for that day, it sounds a little bit vicious, but it's I go stronger as you grow weaker.
I
It's
love it.
a little bit vicious, but as a competitor, that's also kind of I feed off of that. And when it's race time, it's race time, and I put on those shoes, and after the race is done, celebrate whoever I'm racing against. But when you see someone ahead of you, that just lights up the fire, and it's like that gives you something to chase. And if you see any inklings of weakness in your competitors, that feeds the fire. And so that is the fun part of when you're not in the very front, but when you are chasing, it does make the race feel very dynamic. And sometimes people are catching up to you, and it's like you got to look over your shoulder and see, oh, like Martina from Italy. She was very strong on her downhills, and we were dancing in sixth and seventh place for quite a while. And I was just blown away. I was like, Martina, you were so strong. She kept catching me on the downhills, and then I'd catch her on the uphills. So yeah, the race felt very dynamic, and it was always like, oh, there's another one up ahead, so I'm gonna go for it. Yeah.
I love that you say that there's something to be said for chasing rather than being chased. It's that old adage, it's better to be the hunter than the hunted. And
Yeah.
I suppose the silver lining of starting so far back is you have this steady stream of bodies to pick off, and there's always someone up ahead, up
Yeah.
ahead, up ahead. Talk to us a little bit about the course itself. This was a very hilly course, over 5,000 meters of elevation change. Is that something going into the race that you felt would be a strength for you? Or was it something that you had to adapt to midway through the race and turn into a strength after such a kind of not disastrous start, but certainly not a planned start?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. I stayed in Europe after UTMB week. I went basically straight to the area of Confranc, and then was able to do recon of the entire course. Immediately, it was apparent that this course is highly unique, and we haven't really seen anything like it in the trail ultra mountain running world, where there's some pretty technical sections for a long course. And yeah, the course also, it goes off trail quite a bit, where you're just running on grass. And when you're doing the recon, it felt quite slow because you're looking at your watch, you're checking your map and seeing if you're on course. So at first, all of the estimates for how long the race was going to be for top female, we were saying like 11 or 12 hours, and top man maybe 9 hours. But when it was marked, they actually marked it quite well, so it went, I think, a lot faster. So yeah, it was quite hilly. There's lots of steep sections, lots of runnable hills, and then lots of technical, very, very technical downhills. And then there's even like some scree slopes that you go up. I just thought, okay, this is a very mentally stimulating course, and that's going to be fatiguing for some people who maybe do better on more runnable courses. And I think with my background in scrambling and climbing and just like bushwhacking and adventure, that was going to be a strength for me. So it did add a bit to my confidence. And like some people are going to be kind of breaking down out there mentally. Yeah. So it was just interesting to approach it that way.
I love that
Yeah.
you bring up your background in more of that scrambling, the off trail power hiking, and navigating. I think it's a great transition into talking about something that's also a really big part of your life. Obviously, you have the competitive resume competing against the best in the world, fourth at Worlds, eighth at UTMB in the OCC just a couple weeks before that. But you've also established a reputation for yourself in recent years as one of the best, I guess, peak baggers or FKT runners in the trail scene. Fastest known times are a huge part of the trail running community, and you've gone out and gotten some really impressive ones in the last couple of years. And I'd love to spend some time talking about your approach to chasing those, because it differs so much from racing head to head against competitors. For those of our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with chasing FKTs, what does that look like, and what role does that play in the way that you're building out your seasons?
Yeah. This year was highly unique, and yes, FKTs, fast known times, are different than races. They share similarities for sure, but when you actually go and do the thing, yeah, it's really interesting. And I this year especially going after the Grand Teton and like having a film crew and photographers and like that, in some ways it took away from the experience, and then it like added these different elements that can feel quite similar to racing. So typically when I have approached FKTs in the past, and like most people, it's like, all right, you found a route that speaks to you. And ideally, if you have got time available, you would go out and yeah, you would check out the route, you would do a practice run. It might feel really distant, very far away. Like the Grand Teton felt almost impossible at first and very scary, which we can talk about more. But yeah, so the process is a bit different. You can choose your day, you can pick a good weather window, you could sleep in depending on the FKT. However, when I did the Grand, having a film crew and everything, it made it much more concise, and it had to be an X time on X day, and there's like people there. I do appreciate when you can go for an FKT solo, untethered by like the world, and it can feel much more like it's you and the mountain, and you're just running, and you're running hard, and you're pushing yourself. Yeah, and you're racing the clock. You have maybe someone splits in mind from like the previous record holder, and if you've done your homework, you probably have like calculated it out. I need to be here at this time, here at this time, and like understanding your strengths. And then it was really fascinating with the Grand Teton was like, okay, there's a runnable section at the start. I'm going to feel pretty strong there. We're actually going to hold back a little bit because there was the most amount of time for me to make up on the technical sections. That was my weakness. So it's like, that's where we need to shave the most amount of time. And so, yeah, we used, I did not have as much time as I wanted to like really get to know all the technical sections. So that's why I first did it supported. But yeah, so yeah, with FKTs, I would say you would be studying the route even more closely, especially technical ones or maybe like a long one. Of course, it depends on the route. And then you're racing yourself in the clock. Whereas, of course, with racing, it's very dynamic. You've got people out there, you've got people pushing you, behind you and in front, like we just talked about. And then there's crowds, stuff like that. So at the end of the day, I think I still prefer racing, especially certain races, especially racing in Europe. FKTs for me, they definitely serve a place. I love them for like practicing racing. I love them for workouts. I love them for increasing confidence. Like the Grand Teton was like really, really scary. And then just seeing like, oh, okay, this is possible when you piece it together. I remember one of my initial workouts up and down it. I made it up and down in 4 hours, and it was like, oh my God, I didn't think it was going to be possible for me whatsoever. And that can be like a huge, just like when you make the impossible feel possible, it's pretty cool.
You talk about the Grand Teton being scary. What elements of it were the ones that were keeping you up at night when you were preparing to take on the record itself?
Yeah. So, it haunted me, honestly. Like it really did. And I struggled to even decide like, is my why strong enough to explore this? I honestly didn't have a strong answer at first. So yeah. And the scary parts is, yeah, it's tactical. And when you go up there with friends and you're like going a nice gentle pace, and there's quite a bit of exposure. There's a few sections where, you're holding on and you're just smearing with your feet on the rocks. So there's no actual holds. And you look below you and it's like a 5,000, a 6,000 foot drop below you into thin air. Yeah, it's like it can be pretty real. So then you're like, okay, so when I tried to go for a speed record, I'm going to be trying to go faster there, and speed equals more risk. So yeah, and then I would go for like an easy run on like a nice buff trail, and then my toe would like hit a tiny little rock or something. And then I would just have this like flashback to like, oh my God, what if I do that on the Grand? Um, yeah, so part of me was like, is this selfish? Is this like something that I really want to actually do? Is it worth it? And um I did not have the answer until I did this like workout that wasn't supposed to be like a full attempt, but um my coach said like, "Hey, Jasmine, if you want to go and do the entire thing instead of just like a short time trial, go for it." So I did, and then that's when I did the 4 hour time, and I actually found myself, I really enjoyed it, and I felt like quite in control of all of the spicy sections. So it kind of just made me believe like, okay, I can do this safely for myself and for everyone who's also up there on the mountain, because it is a busy mountain, and yeah, you need to respect that
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
When you get into that state, does it feel like racing where you're locked into a flow state and some of the risk maybe melts away the way that perhaps it did when you were at the mountain running championships last month, where you're just so focused on the goal that everything else dissipates?
Yeah, no, it is similar. And it was interesting, like the juxtaposition between doing it supported, and then I had like one day where I could try an unsupported one. So I was like, oh, what the heck? Let's just try. And that was the first time I'd done the technical sections completely solo. So I will say when I went solo, it was much easier to get into flow state and to just
Hmm.
be fully focused on the movements. And, it's just like, it was just me, and I went the wrong way quite a few times and backtracked. And I just started laughing. But I will say it felt much more flow state-ish, which was very enjoyable. And then when I went up, when I did the supported one, the first one, it was, yeah, my partner met me about halfway up, and then we did the technical section together. Um, yeah, when you're with someone else, it can be harder to be in flow state, and like science has shown that it typically
Hmm.
kind of breaks it. And he's like saying words of encouragement, or like telling me splits, or could put water on my head to cool me down, things like that. So it's still very helpful. And then obviously, since I did not know the route quite well enough, I could just kind of follow blindly and not have to use my brain and think. So, um, yeah. there's pros and cons.
Did you feel like conquering the Grand Teton this summer gave you some added confidence heading into your big kind of, I'll call it the second half of your season where you were racing, we'll call them real races, UTMB, of course, World Mountain Trail Championships. Did the FKT give you some confidence that you were ready to go and take on some of the very best in the world?
In some ways, honestly, not actually, because it's interesting because my coach, who's also my partner, was like the Grand Teton actually is quite applicable to worlds, even though it seems
Mm-hmm.
like they're very different beasts. And what he meant by that, like there's a super runnable intro up the Grand, and then just going down 7,000 feet and putting that all on your quads. It's kind of like a short workout, but with like high stimulus. And because I did that 3 times in 3 weeks, um, but my mileage was super low because I had to taper 3 times. And then even in the lead up to the Grand, my mileage was also very low. I was just doing 50 miles a week, a fair bit of elevation. But yeah, it's not high mileage by any means to most trail runners out there. Um, and so yeah, my confidence was a little shaky going into OCC, but I also felt very distracted by the Grand Teton. Um, that said, it's been really cool. Like this past year, overall, my mileage has been lower than I used to do. And, I would get injured, things like that. And this has been my most consistent year. And then lining up at OCC, um, and running that race, it was super fun. I really, really enjoyed myself. The crowds were awesome. And then it was kind of similar to Worlds where I worked my way up into the top 10. And yeah, it was surprising to see like my legs felt great. Like there was no cramping, very minimal soreness, and I felt like I could have kept going for like a full 100K. So it is really cool to see like, wow, you can pull that off with low mileage and lining up at these races fully healthy without niggles, which I used to do all the time. And yeah, so I mean, having the Grand under my belt, I think it did do wonders for my quads. It worked enough high intensity needed for OCC. And yeah, and maybe next time my confidence will be fed a little bit more with that belief that even though it feels like they're very different, it was good.
For our listeners, a year ago you were a DNF at CCC, the 100K championships at
Mhm.
UTMB. You come back a year later, you run the OCC, the 60K. You're eighth. You carry that momentum forward. You're fourth at World Mountain Trail. And all of this comes in a year where you've been targeting these non-racing projects like the Grand Teton. Was that always part of the plan, was to take your mind off of racing for a portion of the year just to have that freshness kind of still available mentally and emotionally towards these big goals at the end of the racing season? Is that something
Kind
you did differently this year intentionally?
um Not totally. Yeah, so last fall I did Cape Town and I did quite well there. And
Mm-hmm.
then the plan was actually to do Chuckanut and then Canyons again to get my golden ticket. But I think I kind of went into those a little bit rushed, and Chuckanut was crazy rainy, very, very cold year. And I unfortunately, on the one technical section, I went into a puddle and there was a rock in there and I sprained my ankle pretty bad and then immediately went kind of hypothermic because it was so cold. Um, and then while healing that, I sprained my ankle again. And so even though I was preparing for canyons, it made the training, I was set back pretty bad. And then canyons didn't go so great. I actually DNF'd there. And I was kind of laughing to myself because it was like every race that I've ever repeated, which was CCC, Checknut, and Canyons, I DNF'd. And I was like, man, I've really put a curse on myself. So it was like, all right, back to the drawing board, take a break. Let's have a nice gradual lead up. I ran Speed Goat this year kind of as more actually preparation for OCC because I knew that, okay, in August, I'm going to have 2.5, 3 weeks to focus on the Grand. So it was like this juggling act of prioritizing races that are kind of different and need different stimuli. So speed goat wasn't a priority, but it was a priority to do for OCC. And then OCC wasn't my top priority, but it was a priority for Worlds. And Worlds was my A race for this year. It was like, I want to do the best there. So it was kind of like this domino effect of scheduling jam packed into August and I guess September. Quite a few races. And I didn't know if we would be able to pull it off. I didn't know if mentally I could handle that much racing. They're definitely shorter distances than I'm used to, but it worked. I don't know if I'll do it again, but um, it did work, and it was just cool to explore. I think I do want to do longer distance races because I still see that as my forte. Um, so yeah, we'll see what happens.
Kind of this cascading effect where each race seemed to build into the next race. You talk about how busy it was and chaotic at times. It also comes in the context of you spend a great deal of time on the road, checking out new zones, training all over North America. Is that something that brings life to the training, or does it make it more difficult to get the work in when you're preparing for these big races?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, one that we're exploring right now. So, yeah, I personally thrive off of novelty, and this is you could call it a vice or maybe it's a skill. I don't know, however you look at it, but I think any runner could probably identify with like that feeling of going on a new trail and exploring a new mountain range and like, you get to see it that for the first time. It's amazing. And you want to do that again and again. And so, yeah, I do seek that quite a bit. And then I've got my van and I do live in that from time to time. And sometimes I rent places for a month. Um, so, yeah, on the one hand, being able to travel and train at altitude or in the heat or check out race courses can be very beneficial. However, yeah, there's like you need to find some stability, finding like a good gym. There's usually more costs associated with that. And then your community starts to get a little bit burnt out of you saying like, "Hey, I'll be back soon," or "Hi, I'm only here for a month, want to hang out with me?" Um, so yeah, there's pros and cons to it. And then yeah, on the flip side, like if you actually have a house and a home and like a shower, closet, and a kitchen, yeah, obviously there's stability. You have a community around you. You're maybe going out and running the same trails all the time, but stability can be amazing and your routine is much more efficient, probably. So, um, yeah, I think moving forward, my partner and I, we are going to try to find some more stability, and that might be in the home of Salt Lake City. So I've still got some more time this year where I'll be on the road. I'm going to go up to Canada, where I'm from. Um, have a little bit more travel this year, and then hopefully wind down in the new year, I guess, in Salt Lake City. So
With how much you've been on the road, it sounds like there could be some novelty simply in having some stability, as funny as that is to say, but
yeah,
the novelty of having a shower and having a go-to gym and
yeah.
consistent trail to run on could be, yeah, just the thing. You talk about going back to Canada and you talk about the importance of community. You grew up in the heart of the Kootenays in Nelson. How much did that impact who Jazmine Lowther, the trail runner, is today, growing up in a city like Nelson?
Nelson's a very special place in British Columbia, and it's like this cute little outdoor hamlet. There's lots of hippies, lots of art, music, and then there's a great outdoor scene as well. The skiing's phenomenal. Big mountain biking town, and then the trail running community is so cool because when I first started, we had this tiny little running group of like 3 or 4 people. And then there's been one guy, Steven, who has been going out every single Wednesday, my entire running career since 2020. And now when I go back, they've got like 20 or 30 people that come out. And now I think they have 3 different nights that they meet up. So it's really cool to see that blossom. Yeah, and Nelson, I think I didn't realize how lucky I was to be in such a beautiful, untouched place in the world. But I think the biggest takeaways I was provided from Nelson is just the utmost respect for the environment and nature, and people really go above and beyond to coexist with nature there. And sometimes when you're back living there, I've come and gone a few times in my life, and it's like it's one of those places where you feel like you're in a little bit of a green bubble and you're like, wow, the world is so amazing.
Yeah.
We're doing good, guys. And then you leave and you're like, oh man, yes, this world is a complex place and all like that. But yeah, Nelson's a really special place. So yeah, I'll be going back there soon. I'm very much looking forward to it.
No place like home, getting out on those trails that you grew up running. Take us through a little bit of your origin in the sport. You ran a little bit growing up, but you were doing a lot of different activities. You're still doing activities in the off seasons, lots of ski touring. Uh, how important is it for you to have those other outlets in your life, even though you still have these big competitive goals as a professional athlete?
Yeah, growing up there, I did cross country when I was super young, and then I moved into soccer and then dance, like ballet, modern jazz, things like that. And I did get pretty intense in those sports. And, I wanted to be a professional ballet dancer. I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And then after high school, I got like obsessed with rock climbing and then did that for like all of my 20s. And then COVID happened, and it was like, oh, we can't really climb together anymore. So turned back to trail running, and then like a lot of people did my first 50K ultra, heard about it a little bit, didn't really know what I was doing, and then rediscovered my gift for running, and then yeah, I just fell in love with the sport, love the science, love seeing yourself as kind of like a guinea pig, and dove headfirst into learning as much about it as possible. And then that I do believe helped me project my career pretty quickly. 22, I believe, was my breakout year. And then through all of that, like I have kept definitely like skiing and cycling near and dear to my heart. Climbing has taken a backseat, sadly, but it's been cool living in places like Jackson or Salt Lake, where there's lots of scrambling and you can just get out there on the rock, and feels
Yeah.
kind of like climbing, but you can move maybe a little bit faster. It's a bit less technical. So that's been really nice. I think just having different outlets, it allows you to be more resilient and definitely more confident in wild places, like you're reading terrain or um, things like that. And then for off season, like skiing can be so great. You can put so much time in, so much volume, but it's so gentle on your body. So hoping to do some more of that this fall, winter, spring. I will say running has taken more and more of a precedence the last few years. I still skied, but yes, running, I think as my career has progressed, it's just I do want to, maybe it's because I see my biological clock is always ticking and I'm in my 30s, and yeah, I want to make the most of my career while I can.
Can't help but think that some of those skills that you've learned in other activities have really served to elevate your running. I mean, just when you were describing what it took to get that FKT on the Grand Teton, a history of rock climbing, looking at the video footage of that attempt, I would say to most non-rock climbers that looked about as rock climbing as you could get without a harness and a rope. And so
Yeah.
those skills definitely seem transferable. You talk about wanting to make the most out of your career and really maximize the time that you have in the sport. What does that look like in the next couple of months, the next year? What are the big goals that are still looming large in the foreground for you, Jazmine?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell this to all the athletes that I work with in terms of coaching and things, is like, you know, you don't have to do it all in one year, but mapping it out 3-5 years down the road, and that can help you feel more at peace with, oh my God, I only have so much time in the season. And it's like, yeah, okay, look down the road.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do want to give a crack at Western States. I do want to give a crack at UTMB, possibly CCC again. And then I did enjoy my time at Worlds. And of course, I'm listing these big races and they're cliche and all like that, but there is something really special about when you're running with some of the world's best, and it does seem to bring out the best in you. Of course, things can happen on race day, but just being on the world stage, it's an honor, it's a privilege. I look forward to those opportunities to be able to do it. So we'll see this next year. I might be looking at Black Canyon, see if I can get a golden ticket, maybe go back to Cape Town in 2027.
Defend your title.
Yeah, defend my title, and then strategically be a bit more ready for, because Worlds will be back in Cape Town in 2027, and that could be really cool to go there. Stu McDonald, who is the race director of UTCT Cape Town, he's also going to be very much involved in the World Champs organization, so that's really, really cool. Yeah, so we'll see.
City and a location that you've had great success with, 2024 Cape Town 100K champion. And I think as a fourth place finisher in any event, let alone something that only comes around every 2 years like a world championship, you probably have a little bit of extra motivation to get back there and see if you can't elevate your position by at least one step. And it could come down to something as simple as getting your way to the front of the starting corral. Jazmine, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It's been so great to recount everything that's gone into this wonderful 2025 season for you. We know it's not over yet. You've still got some big projects lined up in the last couple of months of the year, and we wish you all the best with those. And we are certainly looking forward to everything that lies ahead in the next couple of years. All the best of luck to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the chat. It's been awesome.
That's been a pleasure. Huge thank you to Jazmine for contributing to this week's episode. You can give her a follow on Instagram at Jazmine_Lowther. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Shakeout Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. That's it for this week. I'm your host, John Gay, saying thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon on your next Shakeout.